October 16, 2025. Kattegat Strait, Baltic Sea, in the icy waters between Denmark and Sweden, something unusual is happening. A Russian submarine, known to NATO as the Kilo class, moves through the waters. For years, this type of submarine has been the nightmare of Western admirals. Silent, deadly, the Russian Navy's pride. But today, it is not alone. The Visby corvettes of the Swedish Navy, dagger-shaped ships designed to fool radars, glide around it. In the sky, Gripen fighter jets circle like predators armed to the teeth. You look at this scene and probably think the worst. That classic game of cat and mouse is about to happen. But that's not exactly what's happening. The submarine, well, it's not submerged in a secret operation. It's on the surface, being towed by a rescue ship. It's rusty, worn out, spewing diesel smoke, as if it's dying. And the Swedish forces aren't trying to detect it. They're actually parading around it. What you're seeing isn't a demonstration of Russian strength. It's a parade of humiliation. A live autopsy, where the secrets of one of the most secretive war machines in history are being exposed. And Sweden, historically one of Russia's oldest rivals and now the newest member of NATO, is the one operating. But after all, how did a modern, silent submarine become a walking ghost? And why was Sweden's response so immediate? What did they know that we don't? To understand this, we need to go back a few weeks. More specifically, to the end of September 2025. In the Mediterranean, the submarine B-261 Novorossiysk was on combat patrol when everything started to go wrong. It wasn't just any failure. There were more than 10 critical failures happening in sequence. First, the navigation system, the brain of the ship, stopped working. Then, the operating software crashed. The periscope, the eye of the submarine, malfunctioned. But the real nightmare came when the fuel system exploded internally. Highly flammable diesel began to leak directly into the crew compartment. There were 80 people on board, and the submarine was turning into a ticking time bomb. The crew faced an impossible choice: stay submerged and risk turning into a fireball at the bottom of the ocean, or surface. Expose themselves completely to NATO and accept total humiliation. They chose the second option. Therefore, on October 9th, a French frigate detected the Novorossiysk on the surface, near the coast of Brittany, and next to it, an ocean tug called Yakov Grabelski. That tug delivered everything. Modern and functional submarines don't need an escort to make routine transits. But Russia pushed a different narrative. They said it was a normal transfer between fleets, according to international navigation rules. But NATO wasn't buying that narrative. The Allied Maritime Command released photos of the submarine on the surface being escorted by the French frigate. And, along with the photos, a three-word message: "We are watching." This was the beginning of something Russia never imagined. A 6,000-kilometer journey through waters controlled by NATO. Every meter being watched, every movement being documented. What followed was an operation that showed the whole world just how integrated NATO really is. From October 7th to 9th, the British frigate Her Majesty's Ship Iron Duke took control. 72 hours of uninterrupted escort through the English Channel. The frigate's Wildcat helicopter flew below, collecting visual and electronic data. Meanwhile, the submarine continued its slow and humiliating journey. Towed, vulnerable, exposed. That's why, when the convoy entered the North Sea, it was the Belgians and the Dutch who took over. Like a relay race, perfectly choreographed. The Dutch hydrographic ship, ZRMS Loemus, guided the submarine through its sector. In total, there were 11 ships from 6 different nations, each country passing the responsibility to the next, each one collecting valuable intelligence, acoustic data, electronic signatures, high-resolution photographs, and all of this being transmitted in real time to NATO headquarters in Brussels. But the real show was yet to come. On October 15th, the submarine crossed the Danish Straits and officially entered the Baltic Sea. And then, something shifted. Because the Baltic Sea is no longer Russia's backyard, not since Finland and Sweden joined NATO. So, on the 16th, when the convoy reached the Kattegat Strait, Sweden was waiting. And Sweden didn't come just to watch. The Visby corvettes materialized from the water. These corvettes are not conventional ships. They were designed with a single purpose: to disappear. Their carbon fiber hulls and angular design reduce their radar signature by 99%. To an enemy system, they seem non-existent. But they were there, forming a circle around the Russian submarine, armed with Torped 47 torpedoes RBS, 15 anti-ship missiles, and 57mm Bofors cannons. In the air, Gripen Jagd attacks spanning 39 fighters dominated the airspace, equipped with state-of-the-art active electronically scanned array radars and long-range Meteor missiles. The message was clear: anything that tried to interfere would be eliminated before it got close. And here is the most interesting detail. Sweden called this a routine operation. Yes, routine. That word carried a huge weight, because it meant only one thing. This is the new normal in the Baltic. In this new normal, Sweden is the hunter, and Russia is the prey. But why did Sweden react with such a disproportionate show of force? The answer is buried. In more than 300 years of history, the rivalry between Sweden and Russia didn't start yesterday. It goes back to the early 18th century, when Pyotr the Great decided that Russia needed a window to the west. The problem was that Sweden controlled the entire Baltic coastline. It was the superpower of that time. So Pyotr declared war. And that war, called the Great Northern War, lasted 21 years. In 1709, at the Battle of Poltava, Pyotr crushed the Swedish army. And in 1721, with the Treaty of Nystad, Russia took vast Swedish territories along the Baltic coast. And on those conquered lands, Pyotr built St. Petersburg, the imperial capital of Russia, literally built on what used to be Swedish territory. That humiliation was never forgotten. During the Cold War, tension continued to simmer beneath the surface. Sweden remained neutral, but was always on alert. And in 1981, an incident occurred that marked an entire generation of Swedes. A Soviet submarine, the U-137, ran aground within Swedish territorial waters, very close to the Karlskrona naval base. It was suspected to be carrying nuclear torpedoes. For 10 days, Sweden could do nothing but protest diplomatically. The Soviet Union treated Swedish waters as if they were its own backyard. This episode became known as a national humiliation. Therefore, decades later, when that Russian submarine was seen being towed through the Baltic, Sweden was not going to let it slide. But there's something bigger going on here, something that goes way beyond historical revenge. Vladimir Putin made the biggest strategic mistake of the 21st century when he invaded Ukraine in February 2022. He thought he would weaken NATO, that he would push the alliance away from Russia's borders. But the result was exactly the opposite. Finland and Sweden, which spent centuries maintaining military neutrality, abandoned that policy and joined NATO. And with that, the geopolitical map of the Baltic was redrawn overnight. Look at a map and you'll see Poland, Germany, Denmark, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, all NATO members. Russia is now completely surrounded. Its only two access points to the Baltic, St. Petersburg and the Kaliningrad enclave, are isolated. The Danish Straits, the only exit to the Atlantic, are now controlled as an internal NATO waterway. What was once a dagger pointed at the heart of Europe has become a cage. A Russian territory completely surrounded by NATO countries, totally vulnerable, isolated. The Baltic Sea has become what some call a NATO lake. Therefore, when the Novorossiysk was forced to make that humiliating journey, it became the first major catch of this new geopolitical trap. In the past, a submarine with mechanical problems could have quietly returned to base, but those days are gone. Because now, every Russian movement is monitored by an integrated network of NATO radars and sensors, stretching from the Swedish island of Gotland to the coast of Estonia. But something else is happening here that will have consequences for decades. While those NATO ships escorted the submarine, they did more than just keep watch. They were collecting something priceless: the submarine's acoustic signature. Each submarine has a unique sound fingerprint. The sound of the diesel engines, the cavitation of the propellers, the noise from the auxiliary pumps, all of it creates a specific pattern. And the Kilo class has always been known as the Black Hole, because it was so quiet that it simply disappeared from NATO's sonars. But for several days, while that submarine was being towed for thousands of kilometers, dozens of sensitive hydrophones recorded every decibel, every frequency, every vibration. Therefore, the result is devastating for Russia. Not only were the secrets of the Novorossiysk exposed, the entire Kilo class can now be detected much more easily. The cloak of invisibility that made these submarines silent killers has been destroyed. Now, whenever any Kilo submarine sails through the ocean, it will no longer be an unknown threat to NATO's sonars. It will be a loud and familiar target whose vulnerabilities are well known. And that's not all. On October 13th, while the submarine was still being towed, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte gave a speech at the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and he delivered one of the most devastating lines in recent military history. Rutte said,
"There is a lonely, broken Russian submarine limping back from patrol.
There is a lonely, broken Russian submarine limping back from patrol." What a change from Tom Clancy's 1984 novel, The Hunt for Red October. Today, it seems more like The Hunt for the Nearest Mechanic. The room burst into laughter. The global media amplified it, and that phrase went viral. With a single joke, Rutte sank 25 years of careful image building by the Russian Navy. Putin spent decades trying to recreate the fear and respect that the Soviet Navy commanded during the Cold War. But at that moment, everything became a joke. The Russian Navy became a laughingstock worldwide. So, what we're seeing here is not just the story of a broken submarine, it's the concrete symbol of a catastrophic strategic mistake. Putin tried to push NATO away, but he turned the Baltic Sea, which used to be his backyard, into his own prison. And this rusty submarine, towed for thousands of kilometers under the watchful eyes of 6 nations, became the monument to that failure. NATO is no longer just a defensive alliance that watches and condemns. It has become a proactive mechanism that learns, adapts, and is able to turn every enemy weakness into a strategic advantage. Sweden has awakened from its slumber of neutrality that lasted more than a century, and not only did it face its historic enemy, but it did so at its most vulnerable moment. Sweden is no longer chasing Russian ghosts in its waters. It is ruling in its own domain, a formidable guardian on NATO's new northern flank. For the Kremlin, this humiliation is more than just a loss of prestige. The myth of Putin's invincible navy, meticulously built over decades, well, it rusted, broke, and needed towing. And all of this because of one decision. An invasion that was supposed to weaken NATO, but ended up creating the exact scenario that Putin tried to avoid. In the end, it wasn't a torpedo that sank the myth of the Russian Navy. It was the Kremlin's own strategic arrogance. Now, tell me, do you think Putin imagined that the invasion of Ukraine would bring Finland and Sweden into NATO? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed this content, share it with others who are also interested in geopolitics, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thanks, and see you next time.